everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. I'm the King Live, and today we're going to be walking you through how to play Valorant's robot menace, Kayo. Every game needs to have their resident robot character, so it's only appropriate that Valorant has theirs. We're going to start out quickly by breaking down all of his abilities and best uses for them. Chances are you might already know what his abilities do though, so we're going to break them down as quickly as possible so we can get into some more advanced tricks on Kayo. These tips have been taken from watching some top tier players experimenting with the agent early on, as well as testing some things out myself in Immortal lobbies, so you'll be getting strats that should work in not only the lower levels, but should also be carrying over to higher levels in ranked as well. Before we get into it though, let's introduce our question of the day, which is, what is your favorite video game of all time? Normally when I think of my favorite video game, I think of Guitar Hero. I've always loved rhythm games, and Guitar Hero was something that I always felt really good at and enjoyed playing pretty much at any time. However, another game that absolutely slapped was Viva Pinata. You guys ever heard of this game? It was literally the best. Look it up. Starting off with Kayo's signature ability though, 0 point, and yes, all of his abilities are going to have a slash in them. Interesting choice, Riot. Kayo's E functions a lot like a Sova recon dart, in which case you'll throw it out, it will stick to a wall and scan a large radius. Once scanned, any players in the area will be suppressed or silenced, as most people are probably familiar with, meaning they can't use their abilities, and you will be notified of who was hit, effectively letting you know where some players on the enemy team are positioned. The big thing to keep in mind with this ability is that it is a radius shaped like a sphere, so it has a maximum distance below it that it will hit. So if you stick it too high, it won't hit anything below you. Keep this in mind when looking for places to throw it. With this in mind, other things that you need to know is that it does not require line of sight to tag players. It can in fact be shot before it goes off, and it also will not tell you exactly where players are. It will just tell you that it hit them. This is Kayo's signature ability, and it recharges on a 40-second cooldown, so the common tactic is to use it at the start of the round for early info, and then use it later for a potential retake or literally anything else. Moving on to Kayo's Q though, it's called Flash Drive. This is his flash, surprise surprise. It functions similar to how Yoru's flash works, or even more similar to CSGO if you've played that. Right click to throw it short, left click to throw it far. The right click will detonate earlier than the left click, but obviously won't go as far, so be careful with this. Using his right click, you can do a lot of cool things like lobbing the flash over walls, or if you time it well, you can flash yourself through smokes and make it really difficult to dodge by timing the detonation with the moment the flash exits the smoke. To do this, throw the right click when you're standing around the middle of the smoke, and it should normally work out well. Using the left click, generally you'll be able to flash your teammates in from afar. This can be really useful if you're further away from your team so you can't be there to flash yourself in, or if you want to flash a specific area to prevent a player from peeking there. Just chucking these bad boys back sight can oftentimes be really effective for helping your team get onto site, and generally the left click is going to be more for team play, whereas the right click will be more for selfish play, but I'll leave that up to you. Another cool thing to do with this flash is left click it off nearby walls, and it will rebound in the other direction to flash enemies. I really encourage you to experiment with the flash a bit. This is in my opinion his most fun ability, and you can find some really cool tricks with it. Kayo's C ability is called Fragment. It's a grenade. It does lots of damage in the center, but the damage decreases the further out players are from it. This throws the very same way that the Viper smoke would throw, so if you play Viper, that might actually be helpful for you. If not, don't worry about it. This sucker covers a lot of areas, so you can use it to hit different areas of a site and force people out of cover pretty easily. Other ways you can use it is to block off entryways to stall enemy players from pushing in, or by throwing it on the spike during post plants to stall out the defuse. For this reason, many players are going to be spending time learning lineups for Kayo, which can be incredibly useful to pick up a few rounds here and there. If you guys are interested in learning lineups for Kayo, by the way, we're going to have a second part video coming out soon after this video where we'll go over a bunch of incredibly useful Kayo lineups that you can use in your games, so keep an eye out for that. If it's out, we'll leave a card on the screen where you can click it to check it out. This ability is basically just an area of denial ability though, so all you really need to know is use it pretty much how you would use any other molly. Lastly, Kayo's ultimate ability titled NULL/CMD, when activated, gives him a combat stim, which increases his fire rate while at the same time sending out a pulsating wave that will silence enemy players just like his signature ability. This silence will not alert you of the enemy players that were hit, however, so you'll just have to make assumptions, although keep in mind the range on his ultimate is incredibly large. It's actually around 40 meters large, which is kind of crazy. So basically if you activate it, assume everybody on that side of the map is going to be silenced. This is by far the most important part of the ultimate, but another great thing about it is if you end up getting killed while it's active, you actually go into a down state where you can get revived. This is very similar to a battle royale like Apex Legends or Fortnite. During this down state, you'll have a ton of HP, so if enemies want to finish you off, they'll have to spam you for a bit, and you will be able to see everything in front of you to make callouts. The ultimate itself lasts around 8 seconds, and keep in mind since your teammates have to revive you, it's not exactly always the best idea to keep running with it. It's not a Phoenix ultimate, and you won't just bounce back to where it was used. Basically, if you over-aggress with this ability, you will be able to get yourself killed permanently. However, because you can get revived in the first place, this makes Kayo a really good entry with this ultimate when it's available. Being able to push in and serve as that first man is really helpful and something most initiators aren't as capable of. And that's going to do it for Kayo's abilities, but before we get into how pros have been utilizing Kayo to his full potential, if you guys are looking for some more advanced type content like this, I highly recommend that you check out our hyper improvement system on SkillCapped.com. We have a fast track of amazing guides intended to put you on the right path towards achieving your rank that you've always wanted. It's all backed by our rank improvement guarantee as well, so if you don't feel like you've gotten value out of it, it's literally no risk. If you wanted to get the fastest way to improve at Valorant, be sure to check out all we have to offer at SkillCapped.com. Link in the description below. Starting out with how to use Kayo's signature ability though. Something to keep in mind with this is because it does not require line of sight, the common tactic with his knife is to throw it in areas of the map that are pretty windy. Notice how in this corner on Haven, the knife can spot all of A lobby as well as window. This is a really amazing way to gather info early and spot if any players are on this side of the map. If they're not here, it's likely they're preparing for a C push because otherwise they probably have players on this side of the map. Keep in mind, players may start to adapt to you gathering info this way and choose to play back at the start of the round. To deal with this, maybe wait a second or two before throwing your knife the next time to fake them out. In the background, you'll see a bunch of really awesome places that you can scan for info and silence enemy players early in the round on every map. But if you want more, be sure to check out our Kayo lineups guide. The general thing I want you to keep in mind though is just to use the dagger to scout info early and silence enemies on an engage. A more advanced tactic, however, to do with the knife is to place it in positions where it'll only hit one area. This can be incredibly helpful if you're trying to scout specific information. Notice how in this clip I use the dagger against the wall to scout if any players are playing on generator. Because this dagger is only going to hit generator on site, if it does tag anyone, we can be sure that they are on gen. My ultimate is already silencing all the players on site, so I don't need to use my dagger to silence here, so instead I use it exclusively for info. Get creative with it, and remember there are two different values in this ability. The first is that it silences, and the second is that it provides info. Try your best to determine which one of these is more important in the moment. There are going to be times where you already know that there are 5 players in an area, but you're using the dagger specifically to silence them so that it makes their execute a little bit more difficult for them. You don't need the info if you know that they're already all there, so make sure that when you're using it, you're not just using it to use it. You want to use it to get value out of it. As we mentioned before though, Kayo's bread and butter is really going to be his flash. Notice how in these clips the different ways Flex Ninja will use his flash to engage on the enemies. Oftentimes using the right click to underhand his flash through a smoke and catch enemies off guard with how suddenly it will go off. Other times using the left click to lob the grenade and get more of a bounce off so that he can place the flash a little bit further from himself. Another great thing about utilizing the left click is that it takes longer to go off, so it gives you more time to prepare around it. So if you want to go for a play that may take a second to set up, you can throw the flash, prepare to peek, and then peek after it goes off. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can flash yourself in by throwing the flash and then looking away from it to avoid blinding yourself and quickly flick back to shoot your blinded target. This is most usable when using the right click around a corner. Because of how it's thrown, it's generally a good idea to look away to avoid flashing yourself, and this is how you can make the most aggressive plays with the flash. One bad habit now that you'll probably build up with this flash is flashing yourself in through every single smoke that you see, and this is a problem I have from time to time as well. It's important to recognize when it's a good time to make a play like this and when it's a bad time. It's fun to make these aggressive plays and look for clips, but the general rule of thumb is it's almost always going to be better to wait for your team and go in together than it is for you to try to make an aggressive play alone. Also, lastly, remember, Kayo is technically still a support agent. Although he's capable of making these aggressive plays and is still fairly self-sufficient, try to think of how you can help your teammates accomplish things too. You're not a one-man army. In terms of his frag grenade, as we talked about earlier, basically when using this, you'll want to make sure to clear out corners or block off entryways. You can also save it for post plants, however keep in mind that this could be considered baiting and sometimes it's a lot better to use it to protect your team instead. Saving utility for post plant can be really great, but the primary goal when getting onto site should be to generally get the bomb down. And if you're worried about the enemies pushing in while you're going for a plant, since the radius of the molly is so large, this can be a great way to stall out the enemies for just a little bit longer. Most of us know how to use a molly though, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but one really cool thing about this molly is how large it is and how far you can throw it. Knowing this, you're able to find some really cool lineups to help you execute onto site as Kayo, so keep an eye out for those. Moving on to the last thing I want to talk about though, being Kayo's ultimate. Sometimes it can be kind of funky to use this ultimate, and as I mentioned earlier, the biggest value that you're going to get out of it is the large area it silences enemies from. It's great to run in and have that extra body, but for the most part, the best time to activate this ultimate is when initiating a push or when attempting to defend against a push. The reason it's so good when initiating a push is because it will silence all enemies on site and prevent them from using abilities to stop your push. So if there's any sentinels on the site, they basically lose all of their potential to stop your push and have to fall back for retake or attempt to take gunfights, which could be really risky because your team is still allowed to use their utility. Because you have a free life, generally I'd suggest trying to be one of the first ones in so you can help your team get on site, and that way your team can res you after you get downed. The other way I mentioned, being when on defending a site, can be really strong versus a number of different agents. Basically what you'll want to do is wait for the enemy team to use any abilities that signify that they want to engage a push, whether it's a Phoenix Flash or an ultimate or smokes. Pretty much anything that says we are pushing now is when you pop your ultimate. This is especially useful versus abilities like Ray's ultimate or Jet Knives because it will cancel the abilities for the time being. In Ray's case, this is really annoying and it's basically a hard counter for her, and this is why if you're playing Kayo versus Ray's, I highly recommend learning to use your ultimate whenever you hear the Ray's ult. It's such a good way to just save a life and throw off the enemy's plans of attack by forcing them to now push onto a site without abilities. Especially when you can use your abilities, it's going to make everything incredibly difficult for them, and this is why the silence on Kayo's ultimate is by far the most beneficial part of his ult. Sometimes you're going to be able to get rezzed when you die, and combat stim might be nice from time to time, but for the most part, having 5 enemy players being silenced on a push is incredibly strong, and do not be afraid to use it when you feel a push coming. Finally, if you're playing Kayo, your overall goal should be to gather info early and look for where the best place to execute will be. As we talked about, the best way for you to gather info is to use your dagger to clear out important areas of the map and then spot for you safely. After you've spotted that info, if the players got tagged, you can generally take control of that area pretty easily as they will be silenced. Utilize this tactic on offense to take control of areas early and then plan for an execute using your second dagger in the round once it refreshes. Remember, you have a lot of time in your rounds and you don't need to full push sites immediately, although Kayo can be very good at this still. Use your first dagger to take control of an area and then use your second dagger to execute after you've denied them that territory. If you're playing on defense, you should dedicate your first dagger towards scouting for info and then your second or third dagger for retaking onto site. Now keep in mind you can use your flashes to help capitalize on players that you've silenced already, but since you only have 2 of them, try to make sure that you're getting value out of them. Figure out exactly what the best purpose of your flash is. Are you just going to throw it out for no reason, or are you going to be gaining something out of it? If I'm going to use a flash to take control of garage after silencing a player, this is a great use. It's helped us safely grab control of territory on a silenced target and potentially grab a kill. However, if I just chuck a flash across the map and I can't really capitalize on it, it's not really going to do much for me, and now we only have 1 flash left for the entire round. For his molly, try to save it for when you need to clear out a corner or stop a push, and this goes for both defense and offense. Lastly, his ultimate should be used to prevent players from using abilities at key moments, whether it's post plant or on a retake or an execute. Whenever there's lots of abilities going to be used, pop that ultimate. Lastly, remember, if you're looking to bring your game to the next level, by far the best way that you can do that is to check out SkillCapped.com. Link in the description below. I hope this Kayo guide was helpful for you all to improve your gameplay. Honestly, I'm expecting Kayo to receive some nerfs in the future because he's very strong. So if not all of these things are 100% consistent anymore, just keep that in mind. However, his playstyle should still remain more or less the same, so don't worry, these tips will still apply. If you found this guide useful, be sure to send it to your friends to help them understand Kayo a little bit more, and also help boost the channel a little bit. It really does help us out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below to be notified whenever we upload a new video. As always, I'm the King Live, and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.